Imagine your most mundane, soul-crushing daily grind. You know the exact feeling we are talking about.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That heavy, dragging feeling.
Right, the sweat on the back of your neck, the sheer exhaustion deep in your bones.
Just looking at a stack of final notice bills sitting on the kitchen counter.
Exactly. You're trapped in the relentless, grinding machinery of your own life. And then the power company finally pulls the plug.
That is just the worst case scenario.
It really is. You are sitting in the dark, suffocating in the heat. But now imagine that right in the middle of that bleak, inescapable reality, a beautiful royal walks through the door.
Like something straight out of a movie.
Yeah, exactly. She hands you a magical wishing cloak, thousands of dollars in unmarked cash, and literally offers you her hand in marriage.
Which is wild.
It is, but there is a catch. You just have to track down a cursed amphibian somewhere in the Florida Keys.
It sounds like the ultimate lottery win, doesn't it? I mean, we are conditioned by centuries of folklore to crave that exact intervention.
That sudden magical disruption of our poverty.
Right. But we rarely stop to consider the fine print of that contract. We assume the magic is a gift, when in reality it is almost always a deeply predatory transaction.
Welcome to this deep dive. Today we are looking at a really fascinating stack of sources excerpts from the book Cloaked by Alex Flinn.
It is such an interesting text to break down.
It really is. And our mission today is to completely unpack this modern, Miami-based fairy tale mashup.
We are going to get into all of it.
Yeah, we will explore how classic tropes like frog princes, evil witches, and magical garments are violently grafted onto a gritty, hyper-mundane reality.
The reality of a 17-year-old kid named Johnny.
Exactly. He is a South Beach shoe repair guy struggling with severe systemic poverty. So, okay, let's unpack this.
The juxtaposition at the heart of this text is what makes it so vital to analyze. The story isn't a whimsical fantasy about magic appearing in the modern world.
Not at all.
Right. It is fundamentally an exploration of escapism, severe socioeconomic divides, and what actually happens when the literal fairy tale arrives bearing life-threatening consequences.
It has major consequence.
It forces us to look at fantasy not as salvation, but as an incredibly dangerous ecosystem with its own rigid, unforgiving rules.
Let's start by grounding ourselves in Johnny's reality, because the economic divide here isn't just set dressing, it is the engine of the entire plot.
It drives every decision he makes.
It really does. We meet Johnny working in his family's shoe repair shop located inside the Coral Reef Grand.
Which is a ridiculously posh, high-end hotel in South Beach, Miami.
Yeah, and the contrast is just staggering. Johnny is pulling 16-hour days just to keep the shop afloat.
Because his father disappeared years ago.
Right, went out fishing when Johnny was 2 and simply never came back. It left a massive void and zero safety net for the family.
And his mother is working a grueling second job at a hot dog stand, and they are still drowning financially.
As we enter the narrative, their electricity at home has literally just been cut off over a $500 bill.
The heat of Miami without air conditioning operates as an oppressive, suffocating character in the background of his life.
Oh, I cannot even imagine.
Yeah, he is reduced to sleeping on the hard counter of the shoe shop just to steal a few hours of air conditioning.
This is so...
It establishes a critical baseline of utter desperation. Johnny is not a traditional hero seeking glory or adventure. He's a kid just trying to survive the week.
But he isn't entirely broken by it, which is interesting. He has this incredible hidden passion.
He does, yeah.
Johnny isn't just mechanically fixing busted heels for rude executives from St. Louis. His true obsession is actually shoe design.
He keeps a secret box under the past due bills where he builds his own prototypes.
Right. He literally takes abandoned luxury shoes, strips them down for parts, and builds original creations.
Like that highly specific Kelly green hidden platform sandal he is working on.
Exactly. What's fascinating here is how shoes act as the ultimate socioeconomic signifier.
And they are the central thematic anchor of the text. In Johnny's ecosystem, you can determine a person's entire net worth, their background, and their social capital simply by looking at their feet.
He recognizes the wealthy instantly through their footwear choices.
Bruno Magli, Prada, Cole Haan.
And he and his best friend Meg, who works at the coffee shop next door, constantly elevate their mundane reality through intellectual discourse about these shoes.
It is a brilliant coping mechanism. They trade quotes from Carl Jung, John Locke, Manolo Blahnik, and Forrest Gump.
They are physically looking at the ground all day, dealing with the dirt and scuffs of other people's lives.
But they filter that experience through high philosophy and high fashion.
Exactly. Meg is standing there, in cheap Mossimo sandals from Target, while Johnny is carefully repairing $1,000 Donna Karens.
And that specific disparity, the Donna Karens, brings us right to the inciting incident.
Enter Princess Victoriana of Aloria.
She checks into the penthouse suite accompanied by a bloodhound, a mountain of Louis Vuitton luggage, and 2 hulking bodyguards.
She is the physical embodiment of absolutely everything Johnny lacks: extreme wealth, utter freedom, and pristine beauty.
And crucially, she zeroes in on Johnny. But we need to look closely at the mechanics of how she approaches him.
It is not a coincidence.
Not at all. This isn't a serendipitous romantic meeting where a princess happens to notice the inner nobility of a peasant boy. It is a highly calculated, ruthlessly executed ruse.
The manipulation is staggering when you break it down. She intentionally snaps the strap on her favorite olive-colored snakeskin sandals.
She manufactures a crisis.
Right. Then, she fakes being blackout drunk on mojitos. She even goes so far as to chew on raw mint leaves to ensure her breath sells the deception.
All just so she can bypass her massive bodyguard, Bruno.
Yeah, and demand that Johnny personally deliver the repaired shoe to her private suite.
Once she gets him alone on her penthouse balcony, the theatrical facade drops instantly.
She's entirely sober, deeply terrified, and operating out of sheer desperation.
She reveals the true crisis to him. Her brother, Crown Prince Philippe, has been transfigured into a frog by an evil witch named Sieglinde.
And Sieglinde's motive is a brutal piece of political blackmail.
It really is.
The witch wants to force Victoriana to marry the evil Prince Wolfgang of Zalkenberg.
And Wolfgang isn't just a political rival. He is a sadistic monster who used to torture Victoriana's pets when they were children.
Which is horrifying. If she submits and marries Wolfgang, their 2 sovereign nations unite under his tyrannical rule.
But if she refuses, her brother remains a cursed amphibian permanently.
Confronted with this geopolitical nightmare, Victoriana propositions Johnny. She hands him the quest.
She explains that the frog was shipped to the Florida Keys in a cargo container.
And then she gives Johnny $10,000 in cold cash, a magical wishing cloak, and a vow that if he successfully returns with her brother, she will marry him.
I want to focus on that $10,000 for a second.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Johnny holds that cash, and for a split second, he considers handing it back and walking away.
But then he thinks about his mother sweating in a dark, powerless apartment.
Exactly. And the decision is made for him. He keeps it.
It is as if Johnny is an invisible backstage crew member just sweeping the floors, who suddenly gets yanked by the collar into the lead role of a highly dangerous play.
Completely without a script.
Yeah.
That theatrical analogy highlights the sheer lack of agency he possesses here. The magic introduced to Johnny is entirely transactional.
The $10,000 immediately neutralizes his family's financial ruin.
And the promise of a royal marriage secures his permanent future. He isn't accepting this quest out of a localized sense of heroism or moral duty.
No, he is accepting it because the architecture of his poverty makes it physically impossible to say no.
Exactly.
But wait, I have to challenge Victoriana's framing here. Here's where it gets really interesting. Is Victoriana actually the good royalty in this scenario?
That is a great question.
Or is she just an expertly manipulative pragmatist? Look at the power dynamics. She uses Johnny precisely because he is ordinary and, frankly, expendable.
Right. If a 17-year-old shoe repair boy vanishes in the Florida Keys, there is no international incident.
None. She buys his loyalty with a wad of cash and a strategic kiss on the balcony.
She even intentionally leaves her lipstick on his face so her bodyguards will assume they were just hooking up.
Providing her with an alibi. I struggle to see any genuine care for him. He feels like a completely disposable pawn on her chessboard.
Your skepticism is entirely warranted. It is highly probable she views him strictly as a pawn, albeit a currently necessary one.
Yeah.
Consider her background. She originates from a monarchical system where every individual serves a distinct utilitarian purpose.
She explicitly notes that Johnny is a quote-unquote good boy who works hard.
In her lexicon, that doesn't mean he is morally righteous. It means he is reliable, desperate, and cheap to hire.
The kiss, the money, the promise of marriage, these are not romantic gestures.
No, they are the calculated tools of statecraft deployed by a monarch who has exhausted all her traditional weapons.
Because Johnny's baseline reality is so economically bleak, he's uniquely vulnerable to this specific brand of transactional magic.
So he pockets the cash, he accepts the cloak.
But the moment he actually wraps that heavy velvet garment around his shoulders, the illusion of a whimsical fairy tale shatters.
He realizes immediately that this magical world possesses rigid, terrifying, and highly literal rules of its own.
The wishing cloak, serves as a masterclass in how the author grounds fantastical elements in frustrating mechanical reality.
The cloak does not possess intuition. It does not read the user's heart or interpret their deepest desires.
No, it operates on a strict, almost malicious semantic literalism. I basically equate the magic cloak to buggy beta software.
That is a perfect way to describe it.
If you don't input the exact right string of code, it crashes your entire life and drops you into oncoming traffic. The glitches are constant and life-threatening.
The very first time Johnny uses it, he is hiding in the penthouse bathroom trying to escape the bodyguard.
He throws it on and simply wishes to be home.
Instead of dropping him safely in his living room, the cloak teleports him directly into his tiny, hard-dripping apartment bathtub.
It interprets home in the most inconvenient spatial way possible. He quickly learns that absolute specificity is key.
And that lack of semantic precision nearly kills him later on.
Oh, the Shark Tank scene.
Yes. When he is attempting to travel down to the Keys, he formulates a vague wish to go to the underwater hotel in Key Largo.
He is thinking of the general vicinity. But the cloak reads that request literally.
It drops him inside a water-filled live shark tank behind the glass in the hotel lobby.
He is suddenly holding his breath, staring down an apex predator. Panic sets in, and he frantically wishes to be outside.
Which is another disastrously vague parameter.
Exactly. I mean, it's terrifying. The cloak yanks him from the water and drops him directly into oncoming traffic on the overseas highway.
He is dodging a Hummer and a smart car at highway speeds.
Desperate, he refines the wish again. He wants to be outside a bar, out of sight.
And where does this literalist piece of fabric put him?
Inside a rancid bar dumpster, buried under old french fries and stale beer.
The software analogy holds perfectly. The magic is a temperamental system that punishes user error with extreme prejudice.
But the cloak is only one piece of the technological arsenal Victoriana provides.
She also hands him a magical earpiece. And the introduction of this device completely fractures Johnny's understanding of the urban environment around him.
The earpiece functions as a universal translator for animals. But there's a horrifying caveat.
It doesn't let him talk to just any dogs or cats.
Right. It only allows him to communicate with animals that used to be human beings.
He tests the device back at the Coral Reef Grand Hotel fountain, where these famous, elegant swans reside.
He puts the earpiece in, and the ambient noise resolves into distinct voices. He discovers the swans are actually cursed humans.
Specifically, the displaced royal children of Key West, Harry, Ernest, Margarita, and the rest of the flock.
This revelation forces a radical recontextualization of the entire concept of missing persons within the narrative universe.
In our mundane reality, when an individual vanishes without a trace, we naturally assume foul play or a tragic accident.
In the ecosystem of this story, we learn that a significant percentage of these cold cases are actually citizens who crossed the wrong magic user.
And were transfigured into beasts. They refer to themselves collectively as the used-to-bes.
The psychological horror of that phrase is staggering. The used-to-be.
It really is. The swans eventually direct Johnny to the port of Miami in the dead of night to find an informant.
It is a sketchy, industrial, deeply isolating setting. He wanders into an alleyway and meets a rat.
The rat's name is Cornelius, and Cornelius informs Johnny that he used to be a state senator.
Think about that. A man who drafted legislation and held public office is now reduced to scurrying through the mud.
Eating garbage and dodging shipping containers.
The encounter with Cornelius initiates us into the deeper lore of this hidden magical underclass.
Cornelius directs Johnny further south to Key Largo to locate a fox named Todd, who used to be a human fisherman before he vanished from the MacArthur Causeway.
This chain of informants forces us to confront the absolute terror of this hidden ecosystem.
These used-to-bes are not living in some pastoral, Disney-esque harmony with nature.
No, they are trapped in fundamentally vulnerable bodies. They are constantly at risk of being hunted for sport, flattened by commuter traffic, or consumed by natural predators.
Or systematically euthanized by municipal animal control.
It fundamentally changes how you view the background noise of a city. I want to ask you, the listener, right now, how often do you walk past a stray dog and just avert your eyes?
Or impatiently shoo a pigeon away from your park bench.
Right. Under the rules of this universe, what if that pigeon was a former city councilman? What if that stray dog scrounging for scraps is a missing person whose family has spent the last decade grieving?
The implication is that our cities are populated by invisible, conscious victims trapped in a state of perpetual degradation.
It layers a profound existential dread over the narrative. Johnny is no longer just on a fetch quest for a wealthy princess,
He is stepping into a shadow world where human consciousness is incredibly fragile.
and where magic is deployed primarily as a blunt instrument to strip individuals of their agency, their form, and their voice.
The brutal, unforgiving reality of this magical underbelly crystallizes when Johnny finally reaches Key Largo and locates Todd the fox.
Johnny assumes he can just ask Todd for the frog's location and move on.
But he quickly learns that the magical community does not operate on charity.
No, they operate on a strict, ancient system of transactional proofs. They demand dangerous demonstrations of worthiness before they share intel.
Which brings us to how the text systematically deconstructs the classic hero's journey.
Yeah, let's look at that.
In traditional mythological structures, think Joseph Campbell the hero encounters a threshold guardian who assigns a task, and the hero valiantly succeeds.
Todd the fox serves as our threshold guardian. He intercepts Johnny in that exact dumpster outside Sally's bar.
Todd flatly refuses to hand over the information. He sets a very specific test.
He commands Johnny to spend the night in the grimy, dangerous biker motel adjacent to the bar.
And explicitly forbids him from staying the clean, picturesque bed and breakfast directly across the street.
On paper, it sounds like the easiest test in the world. Just follow the basic instructions.
Yet, Johnny fails catastrophically.
He really does.
And he fails because he is easily manipulated by his own physical exhaustion and by magical illusions designed to prey on that weakness.
Right before he checks into the terrible motel, Johnny sees a frog hopping purposefully toward the pristine bed and breakfast.
His logic immediately short-circuits.
He thinks, why am I listening to a talking fox in a dumpster? There is the prince. I can just grab the frog, bypass the test entirely, and go home.
He follows the frog onto the property of the bed and breakfast, completely disregarding Todd's explicit warning.
And the very second he crosses the threshold, the trap springs.
A magical ward instantly drops over the perimeter of the building. This isn't just a locked door.
It is a localized field of physical compliance. Every single time Johnny attempts to turn the doorknob and step back outside, the ward attacks his nervous system.
He is hit with agonizing, blinding physical pain.
His peripheral vision narrows to a pinpoint. His stomach cramps violently, and his legs buckle under him.
He is subjected to acute physical torture simply for trying to cross a boundary.
It is a phenomenal metaphor for the comfort traps of modern society. He is physically trapped inside this pastel-colored, wicker furniture nightmare.
He is surrounded by oblivious elderly tourists calmly eating blueberry muffins.
While he hasn't showered, smells intensely of bar dumpster, and is sweating in terror.
To make matters worse, he has to burn $300 of Victoriana's cash just to rent a room to avoid suspicion.
He is locked in this gilded cage for over 24 hours, entirely missing the window to pass the fox's first test.
When the ward finally dissipates the following morning, he trudges back to the fox. Todd is, justifiably, furious.
He berates Johnny for being stupid enough to fall for a rudimentary mirage.
However, Johnny manages to bribe him with fresh scones and clotted cream stolen from the breakfast buffet.
The fox, driven by the hunger of his animal form, relents and offers a second test of worthiness.
Johnny must infiltrate the terrifying biker bar and steal a specific golden bird.
But again, Todd lays out highly specific instructions. The bird sleeps inside a magically alarmed golden cage.
But every morning, the bartender transfers it to a simple wooden cage for cleaning.
Todd emphasizes that Johnny must wait until the bird is in the wooden cage, and he must transfer the bird himself before attempting to steal it.
So Johnny uses the cloak to infiltrate the bar at 4 in the morning.
He locates the wooden cage, but there's a mechanical problem. The latch is completely rusted shut.
When Johnny attempts to force it, the dry wood simply shatters in his hands. The wooden cage is destroyed.
This is the crux of the second test. It forces a decision between rigid adherence to instruction versus human improvisation.
Johnny assumes the instruction regarding the wooden cage was merely a suggestion for convenience.
Right. He thinks it's not a mechanical necessity for the magic to function. He discards the broken wood and reaches directly for the golden cage.
The moment his fingers brush the gold, the magic triggers.
The bird snaps awake and begins shrieking at a deafening volume. The cage itself acts as a magical siren.
Instantly, heavy footsteps start pounding down the stairs. The bartender has been alerted.
Johnny panics, drops the cage entirely, throws the velvet cloak over his head, and blindly teleports back to the safety of the dumpster.
He fails the second test as well.
He gets scared off the objective by a squawking bird and a brittle piece of wood.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this sequence is designed to systematically dismantle Johnny's unearned ego.
He operates under the assumption that possessing a magical artifact and the stack of cash automatically elevates him to hero status.
But he lacks internal discipline, he lacks tactical foresight, and most dangerously, he is far too trusting of his own mundane logic.
In an ecosystem governed by ancient, arbitrary, and highly punitive rules.
Exactly.
I think we also have to factor in the immense real-world pressure he is under. He isn't just failing magical tests in a vacuum.
He discovers that there is a literal, heavily armed hitman tracking his movements.
This assassin, named Siegfried, rides a menacing motorcycle, dresses head to toe in black leather, and speaks with a thick, intimidating accent.
He operates like a relentless machine.
Siegfried is currently at Sally's bar, offering a $500 bounty to any local who can produce Johnny.
So Johnny is attempting to decipher complex magical riddles while simultaneously being hunted by a professional killer.
The psychological toll of that dual threat directly precipitates how he fails his final and most devastating test.
He walks right into the trap meticulously laid by the witch, Sieglind.
Following his failure to secure the golden bird, Johnny is sitting by the dumpster feeling completely broken and defeated.
Out of nowhere, a young woman approaches him. Her name is Norina.
She is the beautiful, sweet-talking Southern girl who had delivered his room service at the bed and breakfast earlier.
She has wide blue eyes and spins this incredibly tragic sob story about a pregnant sister trapped in South Carolina.
She reveals that she knows Johnny possesses a teleportation cloak, and she begs him to use it just once to transport her home to her family.
This is a masterstroke of manipulation by the witch. She doesn't attack him with fireballs. She attacks his ego.
Johnny is exhausted, he has failed every objective, and he is desperate for a win.
Seduced by a pretty face and the prospect of finally performing a genuinely heroic, successful act, he capitulates.
He wraps the heavy cloak around both of their shoulders and instructs her to visualize her exact destination.
The magic activates, the air pressure shifts.
But when Johnny opens his eyes, they are absolutely not in South Carolina. The air is Freeland.
It smells intensely of wet earth, rot, and ancient stone.
He is pitch black. And then the voice next to him begins to shift. That sweet, melodic southern drawl curdles into a harsh, grating ancient accent.
Norina strikes a single match, and in the flickering light, Johnny finds himself staring at the hooked nose and hunched posture of the evil witch, Sieglind.
She completely weaponized his empathy to teleport them directly into a subterranean dungeon in Zalkenburg, Europe.
And to complete his ruin, she violently strips the magic cloak from him and locks the heavy iron door,
leaving him in the dark to wait for Siegfried to arrive and carry out the execution.
It is the ultimate brutal consequence of his gullibility.
It really is.
But before we analyze his imprisonment, we need to circle back and examine a critical interaction that occurred just before this trap was sprung. Let's look closely at Todd the Fox's motives following the Golden Bird failure.
Yes, because this is wild.
When Johnny returns empty-handed, Todd is furious. But we learn that in the chaos of the alarm, Todd actually managed to dart in and snatch a single golden feather from the cage before the bartender secured it.
Todd reveals that the physical bird was never the objective. The magic required only the feather.
But it is what Todd demands from Johnny in exchange for this success that is truly shocking.
This is arguably the darkest moment in the entire narrative. Todd the Fox deliberately drops a sharp knife into the dirt beside the dumpster.
He looks Johnny dead in the eye and asks the teenager to slit his throat.
To execute him on the spot. Todd explicitly states that dying would answer his fondest desires.
We must treat this request with the philosophical weight it demands. Why would a conscious being actively solicit their own murder from a teenager?
It exposes the profound, degrading psychological toll of existing as it used to be.
Todd has been trapped in the anatomy of a fox for years. His daily existence consists of scavenging through rotting garbage, fleeing from feral dogs, and avoiding the tires of passing trucks.
He has been systematically stripped of his humanity, his dignity, and his agency.
He has entirely abandoned any hope of a countercurse. To Todd, death is no longer a tragedy to be avoided.
It is the only remaining logistical release from a torturous, humiliating existence. I have to push back a bit on Todd's motives, though.
Go for it.
The existential weight of that request is just suffocating. Why engineer this elaborate test to acquire a golden feather only to immediately request a violent death?
That is a very valid point to raise.
Does the golden feather possess some latent magical property that requires a blood sacrifice to activate? Or was the entire gauntlet of the bed and breakfast and the golden bird simply a psychological evaluation?
Was Todd trying to determine if Johnny possessed the raw killer instinct required to perform a mercy killing?
Exactly. Johnny, fundamentally, is a kid who fixes shoes. He flatly refuses. He cannot bring himself to murder a creature that holds the soul of a human fisherman.
And we see the cascading effect of his actions. Johnny's refusal to kill, his repeated failures to navigate the magical syntax, his desperate gullibility with Norina, they all compound.
And lead directly to his current, seemingly inescapable predicament. He is stripped of his magical technology.
He is locked inside a fortified European dungeon. He is completely helpless.
The transactional magic provided by Victoriana, the cash and the cloak, has entirely failed to protect him.
The trials of the magical underbelly have defeated him.
At the absolute nadir of his journey, the narrative forces him to rely on the single element in his life that is not governed by transactions or manipulation.
Genuine, unconditional connection.
Yes. Trapped in the pitch black, suffocating in the damp air of this Zulkenberg dungeon, acutely aware that Siegfried is en route to snap his neck, Johnny is consumed by a specific regret.
And his primary regret isn't failing Victoriana or losing the $10,000.
His deepest regret is the elaborate lie he told his best friend, Meg.
Before he departed Miami, he fabricated a massive story for Meg, claiming he was traveling to Alabama because he heard a rumor his missing father had won the lottery.
In what he believes are his final moments, he seeks comfort in the mundane. He reaches into his pocket and retrieves the only possession he has left.
A simple opal ring that Meg pressed into his hand before he left the coffee shop.
She had told him it was just a trinket for Irish luck. Sitting in the dark, he slides that opal ring onto his finger.
Almost immediately, he hears a voice echoing in the dungeon.
His first instinct is terror. He assumes Sieglinde is projecting illusions to torture him before the execution.
But the voice proves its authenticity by quoting Imelda Marcos.
It is an incredibly specific inside joke about shoe philosophy that only Meg would possibly know.
Suddenly, a tiny beam of light cuts through the darkness.
Meg is physically standing there in the dungeon, and she is barefoot.
It is a phenomenal structural subversion. The mundane working-class girl from the Miami coffee shop is the entity that successfully breaches the impenetrable magical fortress.
Meg quickly explains the lore. Her grandmother on the Murphy side of the family was actually a witch.
The opal ring was never a cheap trinket. It is an ancient artifact designed to instantly teleport the giver to the receiver in times of absolute life-threatening need.
I compare the opal ring to a magical emergency beacon, but one powered by empathy rather than ancient spells or transactions.
That is a great analogy.
Meg pulls out this tiny, weak keychain flashlight from her purse. She scans the ceiling and spots a wooden trapdoor.
She climbs onto Johnny's shoulders, forces the rusted hinges open, and hauls herself out into the freezing air of a Zulkenberg pine forest.
This sequence crystallizes the thematic contrast between Victoriana and Meg. Let's examine the power dynamics again.
Victoriana's relationship with Johnny requires extreme subservience. She demands he risk his life against mythical forces in exchange for capital and elevated social status.
It is a market economy relationship. Meg's relationship operates on a gift economy. It is unconditional.
Absolutely. Meg gave Johnny that highly protective family heirloom, knowing full well that his story about Alabama was a clumsy lie.
She sensed the underlying danger he was in and gave him her most valuable possession anyway.
And when that beacon activated, she didn't hesitate. She leaped across the globe, literally leaving her shoes behind, landing in a hostile dungeon solely to pull him out of the dark.
The physical details the author includes are deeply symbolic. Throughout the text, Johnny obsessively analyzes footwear as a measure of character.
Meg arrives barefoot, clutching her cheap Target flip-flops in her hands.
Contrast that image with Victoriana strutting in her $1,000 stilettos. The flip-flops and the bare feet represent groundedness, practical reality, and the unpretentious, reliable nature of Johnny's true support system.
But the escape from the dungeon is far from clean. Just as Johnny reaches up to grab the ledge of the trapdoor, Sieglinde and Siegfried burst into the cell.
They have tracked the magical signature. Siegfried drops into the dungeon and locks Johnny in a brutal chokehold.
Johnny's vision is going black. He is seconds away from asphyxiation.
But because Meg's presence provided a sudden surge of hope, Johnny finds a final reserve of adrenaline.
He manages to grab Meg's tiny keychain flashlight and shines the beam directly into Siegfried's eyes, blinding the assassin for a fraction of a second.
And in that momentary chaos, the tide turns. Johnny desperately reaches out and manages to grab a fistful of the velvet magic cloak, which Sigmund is currently holding.
He doesn't possess the entire garment, just a corner of the fabric, but physical contact is enough.
He screams out his intended destination, grabbing Meg's hand just as the teleportation magic violently activates,
The magic rips them out of the dungeon, leaving the witch and the assassin shouting in the dark.
which forces me to pause and present a major logistical theory here, or rather a question for you. Now that they are safe, what possible motivation does Johnny have to continue this original quest?
Logically, he absolutely should quit.
Right. He has been physically tortured, psychologically manipulated, nearly strangled by a hitman, and dragged into a subterranean prison.
And the narrative just proved that his mundane best friend is vastly more loyal and effective than the magical royalty he is supposedly serving.
Why wouldn't he just wrap the cloak around Meg, wish themselves back to the Coral Reef Grand in South Beach, lock the doors, and never look back?
That tension is the crux of Johnny's internal character arc. The rational move is to abandon the contract. But the experience has fundamentally altered his worldview.
He now possesses undeniable confirmation that the magical ecosystem is real.
He knows the prince is trapped. More importantly, he made a binding promise to the swans to locate their brother and a promise to the fox to find the frog.
He is beginning to recognize that these used-to-bes are the true victims of this cruel aristocratic system.
And he realizes he might be the only individual capable of navigating between the mundane and magical realms to advocate for them.
Furthermore, we cannot forget the initial catalyst. The $10,000 is still the only thing standing between his mother and total financial collapse.
The economic gun is still pointed at his head, so he doesn't retreat.
In the heat of the moment, as the magic activates, Johnny doesn't wish for Miami. He explicitly wishes to travel to the exact coordinates Todd the Fox provided.
The National Key Deer Refuge on Big Pine Key in Florida.
With Meg now fully integrated as an active participant in the magical world, the duo finds themselves violently dropped into yet another highly localized crisis.
They have successfully escaped the archaic horror of the European dungeon, but their new coordinates force them to navigate a truly bizarre clash of paradigms.
It results in the most brilliant, satirical collision of ancient fairy tale curses and modern environmental bureaucracy.
The cloak teleports them high into the canopy of a massive tree in the Florida Keys.
Once they carefully climb down, they locate the official ranger station. And sitting inside is Ranger Wendell.
Wendell is a complete mess. He is a grown man, severely sunburned, wearing an official Department of the Interior uniform, sitting at his government desk and absolutely sobbing into his hands.
Johnny and Meg cautiously approach and explain they are tracking a specific frog. Wendell tearfully admits that he currently has it in his possession.
He explains that he confiscated the frog from a local family living in a trailer park. But his reasoning for the confiscation is a stroke of brilliant narrative satire.
He didn't seize the frog because he sensed dark magic.
No, he seized it because he correctly identified it as an Aloria marinus, a strictly non-native European species of amphibian.
Yes, Wendell is utterly terrified of invasive species decimating the fragile ecosystem of the Florida Keys.
He wildly compares the presence of this single frog to the devastating impact of Burmese pythons eating house cats in the Everglades.
He reveals to Johnny that standard operating procedure dictated he euthanize the frog immediately.
But, burdened by guilt and living on a meager ranger's salary, he decided to illegally list the frog for sale on a specialized internet forum,
hoping to ship it to a collector in a freezing climate where it couldn't possibly survive in the wild if it escaped.
This specific sequence raises a profound question regarding the intersection of mythological entities and modern scientific frameworks.
Wendell is eventually informed about the magic, but he doesn't experience a paradigm shift.
He simply assimilates the concept of a cursed prince into his existing bureaucratic worldview.
The strict application of invasive species protocols to a transfigured human royal is a masterful choice by the author.
It grounds the absurd, boundless nature of fantasy in the rigid, hyper-regulated reality of modern governance.
It's hilarious. It is exactly like watching a mall cop trying to give a parking ticket to a dragon. The juxtaposition is absolute gold.
But the clock is ticking, and Johnny urgently needs to secure the frog.
He inserts the magical earbuds, hoping he can speak directly to Prince Philippe and convince the prince to vouch for him so Wendell will release the tank.
And this interaction provides the true measure of Prince Philippe's character. He completely subverts the trope of the grateful, noble victim awaiting rescue.
He is insufferable. Johnny leans over the tank and whispers that Victoriana sent him to execute a rescue.
The frog practically vibrates with rage. He immediately begins cursing at Johnny in rapid-fire
He
French.
then spits a massive fountain of foul frog spittle directly into Johnny's eyes.
Philippe haughtily declares that his sister Victoriana is a vapid, heartless party girl who wouldn't be caught dead interacting with a peasant who shops at a thrift store.
He immediately assumes Johnny is a disguised assassin sent by Sieglin to finish the job. Philippe actively, aggressively hinders his own rescue operation.
This deeply complicates Johnny's moral imperative. He is repeatedly risking his life and enduring physical trauma for a prince who treats him with the exact same disdain that the wealthy tourists exhibit in the shoe shop.
Philippe is an arrogant aristocrat who genuinely believes he can charm or bully his way out of a glass enclosure, completely delusional about his current reality as a vulnerable amphibian.
So Johnny is at an impasse. The frog adamantly refuses to cooperate.
Wendell adamantly refuses to hand over an undocumented invasive species. But Wendell has a much larger, more terrifying problem, and he issues Johnny an ultimatum.
Wendell leads Johnny to the back window of the station and hands him a pair of heavy binoculars.
He points to the tree line and shows Johnny massive bipedal footprints deeply pressed into the mud near the carcass of an endangered key deer.
Wendell drops the bombshell. Two mythological giants, what the local populations refer to as skunk apes, are actively roaming the wildlife refuge, systematically hunting and consuming the protected deer population.
And we see the failure of modern institutions again. No government agency takes Wendell's reports seriously.
He has contacted the EPA, the National Guard, and the local police force.
They all universally dismiss him as a stressed-out ranger hallucinating over blurry, fabricated photographs. He is entirely isolated in his knowledge of the threat.
Wendell turns to Johnny and states that if Johnny wants to leave with the frog, he must first eliminate the giants.
Now, the only reason Wendell believes a 17-year-old kid is capable of assassinating two mythical behemoths is because of a massive lie Meg told earlier.
When they first arrived, Meg tried to make Johnny sound intimidating to the ranger.
She fabricated a story that Johnny is a state champion wrestler who regularly hospitalizes 300-pound football players for fun.
So Wendell genuinely believes Johnny is this highly trained biblical giant slayer.
The narrative stakes elevate exponentially in this moment. The story shifts from a puzzle-solving quest into a theater of war.
Johnny and Meg sneak back out into the dense foliage of the refuge. They climb high into the canopy of a sturdy tree, raise the binoculars, and survey the brush.
And they actually spot them. Two 10-foot-tall, incredibly muscular, terrifyingly real giants violently ripping their way through the Florida landscape.
Which brings up the ultimate glaring pushback for Johnny.
Why on earth should he step out of that tree and risk being ripped apart by two 10-foot-tall monsters? Let's assess the board.
He is fighting for an ungrateful, spitting frog who openly despises him.
He is fighting for a princess who views him as entirely disposable.
He is fighting for a neurotic ranger who is just trying to balance a bureaucratic ledger.
The entire premise of the story has mutated. The stakes have completely shifted from this alluring romantic fantasy of marrying a beautiful royal into a literal, brutal fight for physical survival against apex predators.
The initial capitalistic transaction, deliver the frog, receive the money, and the girl has entirely broken down. The system has failed him.
Johnny is now facing imminent life-or-death scenarios, not for the promised reward, but because the machinery of the magical world has deeply ensnared him.
He has to make a definitive choice. Is he stepping up to protect Meg, to protect the displaced used-to-bes, and to restore balance to a broken system? Or is he going to wrap the cloak around himself and simply disappear?
It is an incredibly dense, chaotic, and revealing journey. We started with a teenager inhaling shoe polish and worn leather in a sweltering, powerless South Beach repair shop.
From there, we are negotiating with clinically depressed animals in the midnight shadows of the Miami port.
We are suffering through the pain-inducing magical boundaries of a pastel Key Largo bed and breakfast.
We are teleported into a pitch-black, suffocating medieval dungeon in Europe.
And now we find ourselves perched in a tree, preparing for a standoff with literal flesh-eating giants in the Florida Keys.
The trajectory of the narrative perfectly illustrates a crucial thesis. Escapism is rarely a clean exit.
Seeking a magical shortcut out of our mundane struggles almost always leads us into thicker, more dangerous, and more morally complex jungles than the ones we were desperately trying to leave behind.
It's a fascinating lesson wrapped in a wild ride.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to really chew on long after this is over. I want you to think about the used-to-bes.
Cornelius the rat dodging boots in the alleyway.
Or Todd the fox begging for death by the dumpster. Or the swan silently circling the hotel fountain.
These are individuals who vanished from society and are now living out their days as invisible animals, completely ignored by the world that used to claim them.
What if true magic isn't about acquiring wishing cloaks that teleport you away from your financial problems? What if it isn't about transforming frogs into handsome, wealthy princes?
What if the actual potent magic we possess is simply the act of paying attention to the invisible people around us?
The teenagers working 16-hour days repairing shoes, the exhausted baristas pouring coffee, the marginalized, the missing, the forgotten.
What if real magic is actively recognizing their humanity and their value before they disappear completely into the deafening background noise of the city?
So tomorrow, when you're walking down the street on your own mundane commute, and you see a stray fox dart into an alley, or a pigeon landing near your feet, or a swan gliding across a park pond, you might just want to stop, look them directly in the eye, and ask them for their story. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.